Hi friends, today we're going to be talking about solving equations with decimals. So if you watched my fractions video, you know I don't really like fractions. I feel the same way about decimals, don't really like them. So our goal today is to get rid of these decimals. Now, before we can do that, we have to distribute here. You've seen I've drawn my arrows here. 6.5 times negative 1.4. So let's go ahead and do that. You're not always allowed a calculator, so I wanted to show you how to do this by hand in case you don't have a calculator that you're allowed to use. Okay, so we know a positive times a negative is a negative, so I'm going to throw my sign down here. And I'm going to do some side work over here for 6.5 times 1.4. That's really just 65 times 14, and there's multiple different ways to multiply. I like the box method because the distribution makes it easier to add it up and do it a little bit in your head. And so what we're going to do is 65 is really 60 and 5. And then 14 is really 10 and 4. Now, what we're going to do is multiply everything. So we get 600 and then 50 here, 240 here, and then 20 here. And now what we have to do is add all this up. So we've got 6, 7, 8, that's 840. And then 50 and 20 gives us 70. Took me a second there. 0, and we're adding these up, and then 4 and 7, that's going to give us 11, and then 9. So 910. So 60 times 14 we know is 910. However, we have two decimals here. We have got two digits that are behind decimals here, so we need to make two digits behind decimals over here. So our decimal, and this is part of invisible math, if your decimal is not shown, it's at the end. Mathematicians like to think that, oh, we don't want to write things unless we absolutely have to. That's one of them. So if you don't see a decimal, it's at the end. Just like this 910, it's at the end. We're going to move it in 2 spots, which is 9.1. So we now know this is 9.1. Let's take all that information back up here. You'll see there's an x attached to it, so negative 9.1x. Now, 6.5 times negative, that's going to be a negative. And if you want to do it out the long way, you can. 6.5 times 1.7 is going to give us 11.05 equals negative 1.55 minus 7.2x. And now that we've done our distribution, this is a good time to get rid of our decimals. And the way that we want to do this is we look for the decimal that has the highest place value, meaning the most number of digits behind the decimal. You'll see here we have 2 digits. Here we have 2 digits, here we have 1, and here we have 1. So we have to at least multiply by 2 zeros in order to get these digits away. And 2 zeros, that's 100. Okay, if I multiply all these things by 100, like 9.1, let's just do that off to the side, times 100, all we've got to do is move this decimal over 2 spots because there are 2 zeros here. So 1, 2, we get 910. Okay, back to where we started from down here. Okay, so we get negative 910x minus, move the decimal over 1, 2 spots, we get 1105 equals 1, 2 spots, negative 155 minus 1, 2 spots. You'll notice we have to put in a placeholder there of a 0 so that we can move that decimal over. And then x, don't want to forget about that guy. Okay, so now that we're at this point, I don't know why I put an extra parenthesis in there. So good. Oh, because I did the 100. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so now that we're at this point, this looks a little easier to solve. You'll notice we have variables on both sides. And when we have variables on both sides, it's a good idea. You could add 1105 here over to the other side, but I strongly recommend that you always deal with your variables first. It will help in the event that the rare event that you have a 0 as an answer. You'll be less confused if you do your variables first. So I'm going to add 720 to both sides. 720x, my apologies, 720x. Draw a line. These guys cancel out. And over here, that negative team is larger than the positive, so it's going to be a negative answer. And if we find the difference between those two teams, we get 190x. All right, let's bring down this next guy. And remember to bring down your sign too. 1105 equals negative 155. And now is the time to deal with this 1105. We're going to add 1105 to both sides. All right, and so now what we're going to do is bring this down. Negative 190x equals, this one, the positive team is larger, so our answer is going to be positive, and the difference between those two is going to be 950. All right, so now we get to divide both sides by negative 190. All right, so this goes away, this goes away. I finally have that x all by itself. And now a positive divided by a negative is a negative. I can lob off my zeros if that helps. In this case, you just have to know that 19 goes into 95 5 times. So -5. You can use calculator for that, or just skip counting also works. But you can also know that like 100 divided by 20 is going to be 5, right? And so this is a little less than 20, and so that's a little less than 100. That's kind of how I guessed there. I also looked and saw that this was a 5 at the end, so it had to end in it had to be a multiple of 5. So that gave me a clue there too. That's kind of just like a little trick to help you if you're struggling with your multiplication. Okay, so there we go. We got rid of our decimals here after doing some distribution and ended with our answer being -5. Good work, friends. See you next time.